Hello, and welcome to the Traumaplicity podcast with your host, Dr. Amanda Helman. What is traumaplicity? It is simply the trauma, which is an event or a negative experience, but helping the brain know that there's simplicity and simplicity in that there's simple steps we can take to help us know we can move forward. And the brain does better with simple than complex. So traumaplicity is all about helping you get practical, simple tools and learning how to overcome and knowing that you're loved. This podcast series, our series number 3, is all about beliefs. And the first 10 episodes, I talk about beliefs versus thoughts versus your feelings and emotions. And then I talked about the top 10 beliefs. There's 20, wait from my book. And then I've had the honor and privilege of having on different guests, such as Elizabeth will introduce in a minute today, and different guests who have coached with me or they've gone through, and I've seen such amazing changes in their belief systems and them having the confidence and gaining their voice back. And so without further ado, I am honored to introduce Elizabeth Biggs. Elizabeth is a multifaceted creative photographer, branding coach, and small business consultant. She is a penchant for connecting the dots between what you do and what you show, problem solving to bring clarity and focus. Elizabeth loves helping business owners in branding, technology, and problem solving to get to the point where they can confidently show up and portray themselves well. Her clients regularly testify they come for one service and get so much more. And I can testify just knowing Elizabeth and who she is, that is true. And certainly as you watch the podcast and even on the YouTube, on my Facebook, and also on Spotify, Apple, and all of the different places, you can find Elizabeth's social media links and get to know her more. So Elizabeth, it is so great to have you on here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a real privilege to be able to come and chat with you, as you have had such an impact on my journey over it's probably been the last 2 years, really, hasn't it?
It has been. I know. I can't believe how time flies. Yeah, it's been an honor to get to know you as well. And so, Elizabeth, we're going to talk. Obviously, we know your background, but just where you had been and where you are now, and just getting a glimpse of that process for you from you, so you can encourage others on that are listening and tuning in. And so, just the first question, perhaps, is where were you before you began working with me? And I think specifically with beliefs, because we talk so much about beliefs when we do coaching. So, if you could share with us.
So when I first met you, I was in an interesting place in that I knew that I had value and that I did good work for my clients on the one hand, but on the other hand, I didn't really believe that. So it was sort of a separate head knowledge, I'd almost say. It wasn't integrated. And that showed up in so many ways, in that I would quite confidently do work, but whenever I had to talk about or promote myself or go to a networking meeting, or I met a new potential client, or I got an inquiry, I always felt like a bit of a fraud in what I was saying. And it was an underlying thing. I didn't have words for it exactly, I don't think, even. I knew that people gave great testimonials and were happy, and I knew that I could do the job I said I could do. But there was something there was a disconnect, I think is the best way of saying it. And I didn't really know what those beliefs were. In fact, I didn't even know it was beliefs that were an underlying issue in my value, my ability to use my voice, to know that I can be seen, I can be heard. Those were some of the things that we covered, and where there was a discomfort in saying things. I think if I was to summarize it, I was learning to put a face on and be a mask and do what people said, and I was very good at the skill sets, but there wasn't quite the authentic resonance yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So you had a lot of that feeling like an imposter, even though you had all these skills, right? And you started talking with all these people. And I remember when we started working, where like there was that anxiousness, to you. So where would you say you are now when you start to meet with people or even talk to people? Do you feel, how does your body or how do you just feel in general now?
I think the thing that I noticed the most was I did something, I helped somebody out with something yesterday, just on the weekend, the first time. And I noticed that I had that anxious shake and that level of cortisol and adrenaline that I'd not felt in so long. And it was
Mhm.
the remembering of this is how I used to be every person I ever met in a
Mhm.
business capacity. Now, this wasn't business, but it showed me, wow, my body's a lot more at peace. I'm not having the same adrenaline surges all the time. I'm not spending my life literally on a shudder. Um, it was a low level tremor. In fact, when I met you, it was so normal, I didn't even know it was a thing. And now it's so abnormal, it's so clear to notice. So I think in a physical capacity, there is a lot more peace in every cell of my body, not just in my mind.
That's amazing. That's so great just to hear that because we've done some individual coaching, we've done some group coaching, but just having you recognize that is a big deal. So thanks for sharing that. And if you're in the audience and that's you, where there's a lot you don't realize how anxious, and I don't think most of us realize how anxious we might be, and then as you're healing, it becomes apparent till it starts to fade, like you're sharing. Elizabeth, so what are some other important lessons that impacted you with rewiring your brain and even perhaps your thinking and belief patterns?
So um, I think when we did sessions on that sort of element of safety and security and realizing I didn't trust myself. Actually, I think I
Mhm.
trusted others more than myself. And that came from a number of beliefs that had come to being when I was a small child, actually. And when I came to you first, it was because of a specific traumatic event that I knew there was still some ongoing things to process. But the surprise was realizing that the belief systems had been rooted since I was a child. It
Mhm.
was I mean, my mum is fabulous and my dad, but due to circumstances, my dad had to work every hour of the day to pay the bills and to keep a roof over our head. And my mum was sick and couldn't work, so was absent. So I ended up taking on a bit of the if I don't do it, it doesn't happen, and all the responsibility onto myself.
Mhm.
Uh, and taking that lead. So rewiring the fact the world isn't going to over explode if I don't keep it in control. I was just holding too much, and that's where some of the anxiety came from. I think in terms of rewiring that, we did a lot of the body scanning and making statements to identify exactly where those challenges lay, I guess.
Mhm.
And it uncovered things that I hadn't even considered, and events and memories I hadn't even considered were so formative. Um, and that it was wired into my beliefs, even in money and what I deserve, and the fact that you're not meant to ever be given any accolades or seen or praised for what you do because you just have to do it. That's how life is, and you should get on with it and keep quiet um and then I guess make out like things are normal and hide stuff behind, keep the emotions hidden, keep what you're really thinking hidden. So being able to come into a greater level of authenticity with delegating things, even in terms of showing up and not having to put such a mask on, in
Mhm.
terms of being able to um, make decisions and trust myself to follow through, but also know it's a process. You were really good at expounding on the fact that there's grace for the race. There's levels. In the group sessions, we talked about it being an ongoing process of thawing out. You used the
Mhm.
concept of the fact that we've hardened and we need to thaw. And some areas, we did this brilliant activity where we looked at what parts of our body were in which state. and where we felt what parts of who we were still hardened and shut off, which parts were thawing and which parts were healthy and happy and full, specifically. And yeah, I still come back to that image and think of, oh, it's okay, it's a process, I'm not fully melted yet.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. And thank you for sharing about trusting yourself in that process, just with the different techniques. And then the thawing out, which I had no idea was coming, till until our second part of our group coaching, where I was like, oh, okay, all of a sudden, oh, okay, then it made sense. But I'd never knew about thawing out. So I was like, we're like ice cubes, we're thawing. So I'm glad that you were able to take those techniques and really be able to identify that in your body, through body scans and being able to reflect, and even with when we processed. So thinking now, what are some techniques you still use from some of the things you were taught?
So I think one of them is knowing that what I think and what I actually believe can be different. So pausing and stating things out loud and then listening to the whole of me. Is there any unease? So, for instance, if I'm creating a sales pitch or if I'm about to share a new offer with my clients that I know is what they need, but do I fully believe it, and sensing if I have any dysresonance? Because I mean, in terms of when we're communicating, even on a friendship level with people, if there's even the slightest bit of doubt in us, any doubt in them multiplies, doesn't it? So we have to be 100% confident. So you've helped me come to that place where I can check and go, well, am I 100% confident? And if not, where is it? Because when it's a tight knotted stomach, the seat of the emotions, is there an emotional disconnect or various different things also? So being able to stop and go, and then state it and give it a ranking so I can see the progress. I love the fact that you do a lot of revisiting things. So we can feel, I know I personally do, oh, I'm having a terrible day. But then when I go back and look at how does the individual components of that rank up, actually, I'm doing a lot better than I was 6 months ago on a terrible day. So really, it's not that bad. It's just I've been doing so well, it's worse than so well. So using those particular tools to help not generalize the terrible, and to know where I actually stand and see the progress. I think another thing that I specifically have found helpful ongoing was we did like a big sheet with identity and various things on, and talked about goals and vision. And before that, I had really struggled to see what I wanted and where I was going in the future and the vision. That opened up, like there was some real brain healing in our sessions that allowed me to move from present to future thinking. And I will testify to the fact that I'm now thinking, well, how does this play out forward about most everything? And I've got like the biggest, clearest vision of where I want to be that I've ever had.
That's amazing. That's so great, Elizabeth. And I'm excited to hear, just from the vision and having you think about that, and even using the tools you have has really helped you shift and even reflect, on the progress of, well, I was here and I'm here now. And sometimes we get lost, in, oh no, I have to have this much growth, but you don't realize over time when it feels muddy that, wow, here's how I responded to now. And having that present to future dreaming and, really thinking about that is a big deal. So I love that you shared that. And that really goes into some of the next question, which was talking about how coaching has changed your vision with goals and thinking, or vision or relationship. So I'm not sure if there's anything else you'd want to expand on, or anything else that comes to mind in terms of how you do your vision or your goals or anything with relationships.
One of the things that you focused on in every session in group coaching was when you got us to do the activations. Oh, and that's the other thing, using those activations and some of the prayers that you start it with. and taking that tool of then not doing it on my own. So seeing it from a more eternal perspective has been really great in terms of how I set my goals, of actually stopping and going, not just what do I want and what seems fickle and useful, but actually having that eternal perspective in it. So I've sort of revisited some of those since. But what you did in the sessions that was so helpful was every session that we did in the Inner Gold, you specifically made us break it down into smaller steps. Instead of keeping it as a big goal, it was always, okay, let's make it tiny steps. And one of the things of this journey that I've realized is that my executive functioning gets very overwhelmed very quickly, and I need lots and lots and lots of little steps. So everything I do, I now sub-bullet point into smaller steps and break it down further, especially if I feel overwhelmed. It's like, okay, well, where am I feeling it and what's causing that? So again, going back to changing how I'm checking in on myself, checking in on my feelings, checking in on my emotions, and then going, oh, well, there must be something that's not aligned in the belief area here. So maybe it's not that the goal's wrong, maybe it's not that the vision's wrong, maybe it's not that what I'm trying to achieve is wrong, but there's something that's still trying to hold me and anchor me back into my past. So let's go back, let's deal with that, and then come back to this so that I can move forward.
That was really nicely said, just in your processing. It's nice to hear, okay, I used to be overwhelmed, I had these goals, and now I bring them back, and then I think about what's my feelings, what's going on, and where has it started? And I think that's a big area. It's great that you talked about how to chunk and break those goals down, and really to help say, okay, I'm overwhelmed, my executive functioning, my brain skills, how can I bring it down? And that's really the metacognition, which is thinking about your thinking, which helps you get there, which I love that you're doing. So thank you so much for sharing that. And so, men and women who are tuned into this podcast and just really hearing about coaching and using their voice or anything that's helped you, what would you say to them, perhaps? And again, I'm all about, which I know in coaching, it's important to have a good fit for a person, right? It's important to have a coach that you fit well with, that they fit with you, even though you're different, but there's an important relationship is important. So what would you say about coaching with me, or perhaps them getting coaching no matter what? Like, how has that helped your life?
So I think the thing is, I got really frustrated this last quarter. How is it I can do X for all these other people and I can't do X for myself? And somebody brought to me this analogy, which I think might be really useful for your listeners. And that is, you can only fulfill one role at a time. You can either be a midwife or you can be the one giving birth. But you can't be your own midwife if there's any level of complexity. A simple, straightforward birth, you might be able to have your own child with no help and deal with the umbilical cord or whatever else. But as soon as there's any complexity, or you're really used all your energy up in the process, you can't do that and do it well and come out in your best condition and best health. So going to somebody for coaching is the equivalent of finding your midwife, your person, even if it's something you do for everybody else, to come and be that outside pair of hands, to be that outside pair of eyes, to be the person who can connect the dots for the things you can't see, or provide the extra energy into the equation that you don't have. So I think your perspective and your ability to say, ask why, or say, oh, have you noticed this? Where's this coming from? Has been huge. Also, I think because you don't state things categorically, there's a lot of room for exploration, but you guide the exploration so easily, and you have such a breadth of understanding between the brain science, the sort of the trauma side of things, but also executive functioning skill sets, your teaching ability, the spirituality, and element of being able to bring in so much greater, wide varying skill sets together means that you are able to say, oh, well, this is a skill set thing, let's put some steps in place, versus this is a rooted belief thing, let's deal with the mindset and change the thinking, versus actually this is your body keeping score and this is on a cellular level, and break that down, because most coaches only work in one area. So having that convergence meant that you working with you, we were able to skip round, and instead of going and getting stuck, because in the past I've had people help me with goal setting and I've just got stuck there. I've just got stuck there because actually there was more to it. There was more happening. And some of them will unpick the beliefs, but actually if there's a trauma and something happening, that your body's responding a certain way to shut you down, moving you into the amygdala, moving the fear and the anxiety. And I lived with so much anxiety, it meant I wouldn't engage with the activity the same way. So coming back to it, that has been so freeing. I mean, I always think of the fact that I had this issue where I went to the doctors with losing the sensation in my hands. And it had been months and they'd done all the tests. I don't know if you remember.
Just froze.
Oh, you're frozen. Your internet is fun.
Okay, we'll cut that out. Sorry. I was like, it froze in like 1 second. I'm like, no. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So you said at the end, was that at the end when you talked about, you said it was so freeing? Was that your last?
Oh, I said, so I said, I don't know if you remember. I don't know if you remember, I had the incident with my hands and I had lost sensation with them.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really good example, because I'd been to the doctors and they'd done the tests and it wasn't a slip disc, it wasn't a trapped vertebrae, there was no neural connection. Sorry, not neural. What's the word where it sends signals with the, you've got things in your body that send signals that mean you can touch nerves. It wasn't a nerve problem. So they said it's going to be neural. So they wanted to send me to a neurologist. So at that point, I came and saw you, and you were able to say, oh, well, because this particular manifestation of the weight on shoulders can be the trapped, it can be something that's spiritual, emotional, or trauma based, where there's equally that weight on your shoulders. And that's how I learned I was taking on the weight of the world. And we went through and worked through the beliefs and we prayed through that. And that same day I got feeling back in my fingers, and except for if I sleep funny at a weird angle, which obviously traps things, I have had it back ever since. But that was 6 months of challenges on a physical capacity because of something rooted. And I would never have thought of going and getting coaching to deal with that. But because I'd worked with you, I went, well, let's see if there's anything else here. I'll at least ask the question, and booked in an extra session. And yeah, it's amazing that something so physical as well as the mental. So yeah, I think my encouragement is literally, if there's something blocking you and you can't work it out, or you've done all the right things and you still can't work it out, it might be that the type of coach you need that has a wider breadth of experience or a different area. And yeah, I can highly recommend you, Amanda, as being able to bring many things together. I mean, I'm sure there's areas that you go, oh no, I will refer to somebody else for that. But my experience has been brilliant.
Thank you. And I appreciate that, Elizabeth. It's been amazing watching your journey and seeing how you are more, confident and have really just branched out. And so, Elizabeth, just as we're ending this different podcast, I'd love for you to share just a little bit of who you are, and what I know I've talked about it in my little synopsis, but what you're passionate about when you help your clients.
Oh, so my passion really, in similar to the fact that you love to bring people's voice out and their confidence out and see them stepping forth, my passion is to help people take what it is they do and showcase it well. So I work a lot on the photography side with personal brands or people who need to be the face of their business, to show up confidently and depict that visually through their branding, through their photographical images, but equally on a coaching and consulting side, tying everything together and weaving messages. I like to speak about the golden thread, the things that weave through. If you have a beautiful tapestry and it has lots of different scenes and a story, sometimes you need a map or a thread that that shows which order the pictures come into. And so often we have all the pieces, but we need to be able to order them and help to explain that to people well. And if there's anything we're uncertain about, that comes across. So I like to bring certainty, but part of I think the piece that I add that is my own convergence of multifaceted skills is that while I have come from a visual background with the photography and understanding light and how to get the best out of people, I had to learn a lot of people skills because actually, you know, you get scared from historic bad experiences with photos or people putting them up online and you're like, oh, I look terrible there. Why did you even share that? I hate having my photo taken. And again, it's a belief. It's not that you hate having your photo taken. It's that you hate being caught at a bad angle at a wrong moment and not being able to showcase who you really are. And it doesn't feel like yourself. So helping people work out how to get confident in showcasing who they really are actually means you have to know who you really are. So it's unpicking some identity pieces. And then there's often the challenges of, I can't do this. And so many people weren't using their photos, which is why I branched into the, I guess, the more coaching and consulting side, because actually there's a number of little other problems. A bit like we said, sometimes for you, it's the beliefs or there is something to do with trauma. I find with a lot of my clients who I help the best, it is that there is a lack of technological skills or knowing what pieces they need and thinking that you need everything that everybody's doing and not knowing what fits their circumstances. So it's connecting the dots between who you are and who your audience is and how to best get your message across without complexity and without all of the time consuming doing everything, but to focus in. So yeah.
Incredible. So those of you who are tuning in, if you love hearing Elizabeth, and she's amazing, right? Just in everything she does offer. If that's you, where you're looking at needing that coaching, consulting, and really getting that confidence and showing up and having your messages and the golden thread, as she says, you have her information that is available on this podcast and in the messaging above the YouTube podcast, whatever, wherever you are tuning in. And so, Elizabeth, it's been amazing and wonderful hearing your journey and having you share. And certainly those of you in the audience, we always want you to remember that you are loved and valued and that you matter at all times. And certainly you can tune in and check out Elizabeth. You can tune into the upcoming Traumaplicity podcast. The video one is on my Dr. Amanda Helman author and speaker page. You can check out the podcast or on YouTube. And certainly check in every Wednesday at 7:00 p.m. or you can watch your podcast at any time. And certainly hope that you have a great week. Tune in for some more beliefs and seeing how you can shift your brain to come into your best self to move forward and tell the world who you are and how you help serve them. All right, take care, everybody. Have a great one. Bye.